We are very excited that so many of you are able to join us today and to have just a really great mix of carriers, agents, and vendors. So we're hoping for a pretty lively discussion. My name is Jackie Sermola, Regional Sales Manager with Ivans, and I will be moderating the discussion. The format for this webinar is similar to the previous couple of sessions that we've done over the last few months. We're going to be asking our panel to answer questions and discuss the latest core download transaction and our topic today, which is the activity notes transaction. I'd like to start by introducing our panel. Joining me this afternoon is Terry Woodford, Ivans Director of Implementation, and also an Accord certified expert. Also joining us this afternoon are Jim Bainey, Ivans Agency Relations Manager, and we are happy that our guest panelist was able to join us this afternoon, and that is Bonnie Two Bears with Interwest Insurance Services. So thank you, panel, for joining us. The great thing about this panel this afternoon is that we think we're covering all bases. I'm going to start out by asking Terry some questions, and Terry's going to give us the what, how, why from a carrier perspective of implementing the activity notes download transaction. And then Jim and Bonnie are going to be able to share those same thoughts from an agent perspective, and Bonnie can share her experiences as well. So let's get started and start asking our first question of our panel. And Terry, that's going to be to you. And as we do with our sessions, we're going to start out with a pretty straightforward basic question. Can you describe for our audience what an activity note transaction is?
Certainly, Jackie. An activity and note, for the purposes of this discussion, is an Accord XML standard where carriers can alert agencies to certain activities that occur on policies, bonds, claims, billing processes. The standards provide detailed information for each of those sections, but I think the most widely used tag in the activity and note is either the remark or the text field in the activity and note, where the carriers can actually download a description of what they want the agency to know, kind of like an FYI thing. The other thing is that the standard was created with a request and response functionality as Accord does with all of its XML standards. But for this purpose, we're going to treat this implementation as a batch download where the carriers will be sending a response to the agency without ever getting a request. And then the last thing that you probably want to know about the standard is that it does provide for the inclusion of an external document through the multi-part MIME packaging requirement. And these attachments cannot exceed 64 megabytes per attachment, and that would be in a compressed format. So that's basically what an activity and note is.
All right. Thank you, Terry. Next question, we're going to be asking you for some examples of the types of messaging this transaction can deliver. So how would a carrier use an activity notes transaction?
Well, the activity and notes implementation, as defined by Accord, has about 60 different types. And from those types, the various vendors have taken a subset. So, you know, there's these 60 activity and note types, and the carriers or the vendors have decided to support some subset of those that pretty much compile everything that an agency might want to know about a given policy or a bond or a claim or something along that line. For example, a carrier may want to inform the agency that a policy is pending cancellation. So they would build this Accord XML standard, and they would associate the policy number, the line of business, all the basic information about the policy, and then in the text it would inform the agency that the policy is pending cancellation due to non-payment. What that does is it provides the agency with the ability then to work with the insured to make some other way to satisfy or to take care of the situation at hand. So it's really a format that these carriers can use to continually inform their agencies on things that they need to know. Some carriers also use this implementation to attach documents such as deck pages, so that they can provide policy detail information and include a deck page on the activity and note and download that to their agencies. Other carriers want to download claims information, and there's adjuster information and payments and things about the claims that they want the agencies to know. The one thing to note here is that you would not want to implement an activity and notes claims implementation to satisfy a claims download scenario. Claims download is a totally different XML standard, and it is treated totally differently in the vendor systems. When the vendor receives a claims download message, it actually updates the vendor's database so that the agency can go in there and look and review claims information and adjusters and payments and and just track the whole claims process. Where the claims information that is provided in an activity and note is really just kind of descriptive, some information about the claim that the carrier wants the agency to be aware of. So you would never do an activity and notes claims implementation instead of an actual claims download implementation. The other thing is that they also, some carriers, I don't know if I mentioned this, but they also include attachments like deck pages, but I think I might have mentioned that already. So let's take a look at what vendors support the activity and notes, and there are some differences upon how they treat or how they process this information. Currently, Applied, Vertafore, NASA, and Xanatech all support the activity and notes download. And all of these vendors require that the information be transmitted to their agencies through the IVANS ECS ICE environment. So the only way that you can get this information to your agencies is through the ECS mailbox facility. Now, like I said before, some of these management systems actually handle the activity and notes differently. Applied, when they receive an activity and note, they will actually associate that information with an existing policy within their system. They take data that's provided in the activity and note, such as the NAIC code, the policy number, the policy period, and the line of business, and they associate the activity and note with a given policy in their system. Whereas Vertafore just takes it in as a message, just kind of a general FYI. They do not attach it to a specific policy. However, future releases of the Vertafore product will also provide this functionality. Vertafore also requires that the Transact Now client be present on the agency side. So in order for agents that use Vertafore products to receive activity and notes, they must also have the Transact Now client. Applied uses the business purpose type code within the standard, whereas Vertafore uses the activity type code. These codes are different in a lot of ways with some similarities, and the trick behind development in all of this is taking data provided by a carrier and satisfying both Applied and Vertafore so that you can download consistently the same information regardless of the vendor. The actual products that are supported for activity and notes from Applied are TAM and EPIC. TAM version 12 and higher, as well as EPIC, support the Accord XML standard version 1.23, whereas the TAM versions 11 up to version 12 support a proprietary XML standard known as alerts. The Vertafore products that support activity and notes is AFW, AMS360, Instar, Prime, and Sagitta. And all of these products support the Accord XML version 1.17. One of the things that IVANS has done is we've gone ahead and within our translator have defined a version that incorporates both 1.23 and 1.17 so that when we do a development, we have just a single definition that will satisfy both Applied and Vertafore. We also provide a definition of file for the proprietary alerts XML standard that Applied supports in their TAM version 11 through 12. So we provide all the definitions required to successfully do an implementation amongst all these environments.
Terry, thank you. And I think that I want to make an important note and a couple of notes to reiterate what you're saying. First of all, Ivans can help carriers implement these transactions by providing those types of translation services. And because there are nuances between the agency management system vendors, systems that support the transaction, we can help you to navigate that and to understand how and what goes where. So it's important to keep an eye on that. We also know that there are many other vendors that are either going to be developing or looking into developing support for this transaction. So we are aware that not only interest is going to increase, but its reach amongst the parties in the industry as far as support goes. You made a really good point as to the distinction between claims download and claims activities and notes. And I want to reiterate that point that activity and note claims messages do not replace the activity and note download transaction itself. Before I move on into my final question, we're talking on somewhat of a high level, and in interest of time, we're really not able to provide demos of how the different systems handle the activity note transaction. But as a follow-up for anyone that's interested on this call, we would like to schedule individual sessions where we can give the adequate amount of time to demo each vendor system and work with that particular vendor for to answer some more specific questions. And right now, I'd like to move into my final question for you, Terry, and that would be to ask you to describe some of the benefits of an activity note implementation.
Well, you know, I think, Jackie, the greatest benefit from a carrier perspective anyway is providing as much support for its agencies as possible. And it all comes back to that ease of doing business. You know, and I think the largest implementation that could be that beneficial right now is in the attachment of the deck page to an activity and note. So many carriers, and I dare say mail deck pages because I don't think that happens anymore these days. But I know a lot of carriers are posting or creating web services where agencies can come in and request deck pages from that web service. But that's a process that's outside their normal day-to-day business, and they've got to be able to organize where the attachments go, and they've got to be able to update them as carriers change their deck pages because of policy changes and whatnot. So I think just by downloading a deck page and having it associated with a policy in the agency management system is just providing a way to do business very easily for the agencies. So as far as the agency question, or you know, the agency benefit behind it, I think I'll let Jim and Bonnie speak to that effort.
Yeah,
Great.
So that's a great segue. Jim, I also want to say thank you for joining us, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to you and to Bonnie at this point.
Great, thanks Jackie and Terry. Again, I'm really pleased to be on this session today because I really think Activity Notes is a wonderful tool for agents out there that allows agents to maximize their use of their management systems in their office and really enhance a single workflow in their agency by using this function. And as an agency relations manager, I come in contact one way or another with close to 200 agents each and every month through user group meetings, webinars, newsletters, face-to-face meetings with agents, etc., talking about a lot of different interface type subjects, and Activity Notes has certainly been one we've talked about here in the recently, and it's really gaining some momentum out there from an agency standpoint as agents learn what they are and what they can be used for within their system in their office. So let me just run down a few benefits from an agency side, and really at the end of the day it's to reduce processing time for the folks in the agencies and to help the efficiencies of their workflow. That is the key benefit of all of it. And it really allows, another one is it allows carriers to deliver information that's currently not supported in the way they're sending things now in regular download. So it allows agents to get things that aren't a normal thing in download. So that's important. They can get more information into their systems, and it eliminates the need to maintain multiple interfaces with multiple different carriers and partners, which really helps streamlines what an agency has to do. Another thing I think Terry mentioned is also from an agency standpoint, it's a benefit. It automatically attaches info to the appropriate policy in the system, and it again reduces your processing time. And one of the big benefits from an agency is it ensures document security if you're by using the Ivans mailbox, and so you're getting secure alternatives to email, fax, the old snail mail, etc., other delivery methods. This is a secure way of getting information from the carrier. On that same realm, it eliminates paper routing within the agency, etc. It helps create activities for the agent's staff so they can manage and monitor what's going on in their book of business. It makes it easier to do follow-ups for each transaction for their clients, etc. And it creates a permanent record, policy record, housed in the system that helps protect the agency E&O. So I can go on and on and on about all the different benefits the activity notes have for agents, but we are pleased today to have an agent with us to talk about that as well. And I'd like to bring in Bonnie Two Bears, who's the system coordinator for Interwest Insurance. And I know Bonnie's been very active in the industry in company agent interface, sitting on a number of committees, etc. And you might have seen and heard her in the past on things. So I want to welcome her in. So welcome, Bonnie.
Well, thank you, Jim. Very, very glad to be here. Activity notes are truly one of the, in my opinion, my humble opinion, one of the greatest inventions or recent successes we've had with agency carrier interfaces in recent memory. It has been a huge benefit to us in our agency. We've been paperless here for going on 8 years now. And as we strive to be paperless, many of the carriers that we represent have also been going paperless. And what ended up happening, we had so many different delivery methods coming to us from so many different carriers for policies, the cancellation and reinstatement notices, billing notices, and so on. With one carrier, they might email it to us. With another carrier, we might have to log into their website and download the documents. Another carrier would send us a link that we would have to click on the link to go and get it, and then others were sending it via snail mail. And because we were paperless, we had to go through different steps for each of those carriers to process those documents, route them to the proper individual, and then connect it to our electronic client file in our system. We are on an applied system. We are TAM users, and we've had access to the activity notes when it first came out as batch alerts. And what a huge time savings it has been for our staff. When the documents come through, or with some of our carriers, they do just send a note, which in the TAM system is called an activity, where they might indicate that there's a billing due or so on. But it comes into our system, shows up in the account manager's inbox. They decide what they have to do with it, either click it done, forward it on to somebody else, and file it away. It has just been an awesome, awesome update for us. We love it.
Great. That's good information. What, from your perspective, I know you talk and you hear a lot of other agents out there in the industry. What have you seen and heard from them on how activity and notes is received?
Well, it's been interesting. I am currently the chair for the Industry Solutions Committee for AskNet. And in that capacity, I've been participating quite a bit in both ACT and AUGI meetings, as well as holding user group for our AskNet membership meetings. And initially, the response was a little bit mixed. Some of the agents that I spoke to initially wanted to know, why would we want to have this? And the more it's been in place and the more agencies that are starting to accept the activity notes in their systems, now all of a sudden the light bulb is coming on and everybody is now clamoring to get more carriers on board to offer this tool for us to use on our end. As Terry pointed out earlier, there is a myriad of transactions that are available. We actually activate as many as our carriers will offer, and really what I'm hearing throughout the industry is more and more agencies are asking for the electronic delivery of these transactions. This is the list of all of the Accord standard activity transactions that are available in the system. Certainly not every carrier offers every transaction, but the ones that we work with personally in our agency that have implemented it are primarily sending the policy documents, endorsements, cancel and reinstatement, the billing notices, claim information, as you said earlier, that can be a supplement to a claim download in terms of giving us additional information of what's going on with that particular claim. So it's a huge, huge bonus.
So, Bonnie, from what you hear out there, from the agents that aren't using this yet, what's the biggest hurdle for them to use it?
Carriers aren't offering it. You know, we have meetings for our AskNet user groups. I've talked to agents at the ACT and AUGI meetings that are a combination of agents from all vendor platforms, and even though they've heard about this transaction and they would like to have it in their agency, unfortunately when they check with the carriers they represent, not all of them are offering it. I'm very excited, though, that the more carriers that we talk to on a one-on-one basis, it is in the works for a lot of our carriers. So I'm hoping that we're going to see the list of carriers offering this tool growing pretty fast.
Great. And finally, let me just ask you one real quick question about the efficiencies in the workflow of an agency. How does it really affect those efficiencies within an agency?
Oh, absolutely. As I said earlier, depending on when carriers deliver documents in a different method, from our perspective, if we get it in paper format, somebody has to take that paper, scan it into the system, look up, see who handles that account, route it to that person, and then that person then has to look at it, figure out what it is, find their client in the system, and get it attached. If it comes in an activity note, on the contrary, because it does match up in our system the same way that the policy download does, looks for the policy number, the NAIC code, all the typical matching criteria that is in place for policy download, and it automatically routes it to the appropriate client in the system. In our CAM system, which this I really, really do love, we also have the ability, depending on which of these activity notes transaction types it is, we have the ability to control which activity category we want to assign to that and who we want to be notified that that document has been received in our system. So it does I cannot, and I think that's been kind of difficult for agencies who don't have this already in their systems, for them to grasp just what the time savings are. But when you look at all the steps of what you have to do now to manually retrieve those documents, and instead to have come in the morning, turn on your system, go to your inbox, boom, they're there. It's huge.
Great. I think that sums it up pretty good right there. So Jackie, I'm going to turn it back over to you to wrap up and start our question and answer.
Well, thank you again, everyone on the panel. What I'm going to do now is pose the questions to each of you based on the question that have been coming in throughout the presentation, and we've had quite a number of them. So forgive me all, I'll try to be as organized as possible in asking them. I think the best place to start is, Bonnie, with you. There was a question that came in that asked, what is your favorite activity note method, and which ones would be on your wish list?
Oh, that's a good one. Probably my favorite would be the cancellation and reinstatement notices. If on a carrier site there's a problem with a policy, maybe a non-payment cancellation, the carrier generates the notification. We know of that in our system the very next day. Otherwise, we would have to wait for either snail mail or somebody to log into their website and find out what's going on. So to me, it is a huge client management savings of time to be able to know what's going on in that account immediately. Second favorite would probably be the policy delivery. I know Terry had mentioned a size limitation for the document attachment that comes through. One of the carriers that we represent actually sends the policy attachments, and it's for our rather large commercial policy accounts. We get some policies in that can be 700 to 1,000 pages long, and they come through in the activity notes beautifully without any problem as a PDF document that is right there in our systems. In terms of my wish list, I guess I kind of wish more carriers would start sending the renewal quotes. As yet, I don't have any carriers that are implementing the renewal quote option to give us that opportunity ahead of time rather than just sending us the renewal policy.
Well, Bonnie, thank you for the answer. And ironically, I recently talked to a couple of carriers asking for that, asking whether or not something like that is available. So I hope that we're getting there quickly with carriers being able to offer that as well. I'm going to move into the next question, and this question, I think, Jim, you could probably answer that. I could answer this question, but why don't we hear from you? And it's about whether or not this would replace real-time inquiry, so the messages coming as a download from Activity Note replacing real-time inquiry. Can you explain to us why that would not be the case?
Well, let's see. That is a good question, and I don't think it is the case. It does not replace it. It is to me a quicker right to your system notification that comes from the carrier. An inquiry from an agent, a real-time inquiry from an agent is certainly valuable tool for an agency, but that is from what an agency is looking to do and find out about. On the other hand, Activity Note is something that's going on right away with that particular an issue with that particular client or policy, which will does not have to they don't have to wait on an inquiry to get it. So I would say they're different, both valuable, but certainly Activity Notes is more of a I guess for lack of better terms, more of a real-time issues for a policy that comes to the agency without having to initiate it by the agent.
Right, but I think I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bonnie. I'll let you.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. And if you you don't know what you don't know in an agency, and unless you're going in and doing a real-time inquiry every day on every single one of your clients, you may not know about that cancellation unless it got sent to you as an activity note.
Right. I think another important note, though, is that if an agent is on the phone with an insured at a specific time, and there just is some question about a billing that maybe you can initiate a real-time inquiry about it right there and then. So the real-time inquiry still has its benefits. Of course, then the activity and notes will give you information all at your fingertips when you come in the morning. But there are some distinctions between the two. So the next question, and again, these questions are coming in pretty quickly, so I'm going to go through them one by one and try to stay organized. Terry, I believe this is a question for you. Do the transactions come through with the same activity category / code?
Well, you know, it really does. It does depend on. It's depending on what the activity is. There's a generic policy activity type code, Jackie, where you could lump in a lot of different type of activity, like pending cancellation and reinstatements and things like that. You can all lump that into a standard policy type code. But then, you know, based on if there's something very specific, like the list that's showing up on the screen, then you could use those specific type codes. So it really does come down to taking a look at what the carrier wants to notify the agency with, and then finding out where it best fits.
Okay. And if there is another question about how it works, who it works with. So, Terry, is this working at this time for AMS Instar? We get notes from progress, but are just basic notes, not a policy.
It does work for Instar. That is a supported activity and notes user through Transact now. I don't have a lot of detail as to exactly how Instar processes the activity and notes download, but I'm sure that we could provide this person with the right people to talk to in that regard, Jackie.
Okay, and that's actually to follow up on what you're saying. There may be some questions here that we might not be able to provide the best answer for you at the moment, so we will either need you to follow up, or we will certainly follow up with each person to make sure that we clearly answered your question. There was another question, Terry. This was something that you spoke about in the beginning. The question is, what does send policy information for unsupported line of business mean?
Send policy for unsupported line of business.
Yes, you had mentioned in the beginning that this can be used to send information
Yeah.
about lines of business that aren't supported in the system.
Well, you know, there's a couple of ways you could probably address that. You know, obviously there are a number of carriers that want to provide bond information to its agencies, and this is really the only vehicle that's provided currently that provides for any kind of detail as it relates to a bond. So that's one way to do a line of business like that. Now, as far as doing a boiler and machinery or a line of business that's just not supported in download, you obviously could download all the basic policy information about it and then include an attachment with the deck page, or you could actually utilize some of the remarks to outline some of the premium or some of the coverages that exist on that line as well. And I don't know, maybe Bonnie, maybe you can speak to how you might see this benefiting in a line that's not supported in downloads, in particular the commercial lines.
Well, I think you hit it on the head. With the policy download that we have available, policy download sends information directly into an ACORD form. And the lines of business, like you mentioned, surety benefits. There are many lines of business in commercial lines that we might get policy download information that pertains to general liability, perhaps the commercial auto, but inland marine schedules. That type of information is not currently being sent in ACORD format. So most certainly the activity notes with attachments would be a great way to send that to the agencies.
Okay. There was a question that came in, actually. It came in multiple times from quite a few people. So I'm going to go ahead and field that right now. And the question was if there was anyone collecting a list of carriers that are currently offering activity note download, and what types are they offering. So that I'll address by referring everyone to both Applied and Vertifor's website. On their website, they both offer an interface grid, and you can see the different types of download transactions that each of the carriers are supporting at this time. If you are an agent and you're interested in being able to receive these types of transactions, activities, I would encourage you to reach out to your carriers and talk to them about it, and let us know if you have any questions. But the best place to find the carriers that are supporting it are both of those interface grids on Applied and Vertifor's website. If you reach out to us directly, we can help you with that and help you get a list. So another question is, are the description fields in activities and attachments customizable by carrier? Terry, I'm going to ask you to field this. The rest of the comment was that the experience has been that the text is very generic, that activity notes is a big time saver for this particular agent. And forgive me, I believe it's an agent. No, I'm sorry, I'm reading a different question. So Terry, are the description fields in activity and attachments customizable by the carrier?
They most certainly are. There's a remark field, there's a remark text field that exists in the standard that is an undefined length. It could be as long as you want it to be. It can be as much detail as you want it to be. It can be formatted in a particular way that presents to the agency more as efficient as possible. But I think that this information needs to be conveyed to the agency in such a way that it's not overbearing. I think they need to know what they need to know in order to act upon it. So it's not like you would format an entire document using this description line, although you could. You could put a heading, and then you could put, headings out there and titles, and you could put data in there. You can certainly format this line as many times as you want and create any kind of report that you really want to do with that. But again, this information is going to be provided to the agency, and it needs to be brief and to the point, I think.
Great, thank you. Our next question is about the size limit that you talked about in the very beginning. And the question is, can you translate, and I'm not sure how you'll answer this question, but can you translate 64 megs into number of pages approximately? And I'm sure that's going to differ, but how would you answer that?
Well, how I would answer that is I would ask that the user, whoever's asking this question, take one of their standard decks or in a PDF format and compress it, because that's 64 megabyte is compressed. They're talking about 64 megabyte compressed as part of the functionality behind, including in a document, is that it's compressed. So I would say to take your 400-page deck page and compress it and see what it comes down to. 64 megabyte compressed is very large. Bonnie had indicated earlier that it was several hundred pages, and I know that these deck pages can be with all this legal, verbiage in there. And there's also, a lot of carriers are using what's called the agency copy, which, kind of leaves out a lot of the verbiage and just gives them the information that they need about coverage and premium and things along that line. So we have a number of carriers that are using the agency copy as the copy that they're providing to the agency. But again, I would say just take whatever document you're looking at and compress it down and see what it goes to.
Okay. Next question, and Terry, I'm going to stick with you for this. This is in regards to the Accord format. And the question is, do activity notes indicate, or excuse me, I download using AL3 format. Would I be able to attach the XML activity note transaction also?
Ask that again, Jackie. I'm not sure I understand.
Well, I think let me see if I can rephrase it, and if I rephrase it incorrectly, Sharon, please yell at me. But so the activity note transaction, as we've talked about, is an Accord XML download transaction. It comes down as an Accord XML format. However, other download transactions are Accord AL3 formats. Yeah. So I think the question would be, can you send all of this in one download?
You can. It can be sent at one time, but it's going to be sent via a different class. Right now, within Transfer Manager and within the applications that actually post things to mailboxes, we have an AI down which is defined as our AL3 class, and within Transfer Manager it's defined as an AL3 flat file format. There's a different download class for XML files. So it could be put in the same mailbox at the same time, but it does use a different class. It points to a different location on where to pick up the data. It still uses a transfer file to say who it goes to and what the name of it is. And then when the agencies pull it down, they pull it down by class as well. They pull down their AL3 and their XML at the same time, but they use different classes within their Transfer Manager that puts them in different places and treats them differently when they get updated in the agency management system.
Okay, thank you. This next question is, we have a mourning process that emails deck pages, bills, etc. to each of our agents that request it. The trouble is that they have to match them up with the policy on their end with the activity notes, or on their end with the activity notes download. Did I hear correctly that we can send these attachments through a download and they will attach directly to a policy?
That is absolutely correct. Within Applied currently, Vertafore does not attach, the current Vertafore product does not attach to an existing policy, but they're going to provide that functionality in a future release. I don't know what the timing behind the Vertafore update is, but yes, these activity and notes downloads will assign directly to a policy through the means that we talked about earlier, the NAIC code, the policy number, the policy line of business, and the policy period, so that when an agency looks at their policy, that policy in their system, they see all the attachments that are associated with it.
Okay. And our next question would be, how do we go about setting it up? Do we contact each carrier? Bonnie, can I ask this question of you? If an agent were asked you how they would go about getting activities notes, how would you answer them?
Well, the first thing that you have to do is to, of course, make sure that you're set up with your vendor to accept download in the first place. Once you have it set up, then even if you're already receiving policy download from a particular carrier, you do also, because it is a separate transaction, you have to, with some carriers, you have to fill out a separate form. Some it's as easy as making a phone call or talking to your marketing rep. But yes, you do have to contact each carrier individually and ask that they implement the activity notes as well. As you pointed out earlier, there is a list of available carriers on each of the vendors' websites that they can check and see which companies they represent offer it, and then contact that company directly.
Okay. Let's see. I am a carrier and we send a renewal quote download and people hate it. What is the difference between the activity of a renewal quote or an RWQ policy download? I guess that's the end of the question. Bonnie?
Let me just throw out there real quick from an implementation perspective. I mean, they're really one and the same, Jackie. So really, I mean, Bonnie would be the one that would really need to answer that question.
Right. Yeah. Bonnie.
Yeah, I could, and I have to say I'm a little puzzled by it because to me, I probably hear more concerns from agencies who are receiving the RWQ as a download transaction because that affects their current policy view, most agencies that I've worked with, as well as in our agency, we want our current record to show the coverage that's in effect right now. If we're just getting a renewal quote, that is pending, and to us that shouldn't be on my first page. Whereas if I'm getting an activity note that has the renewal quote as a separate item, that's what I was saying earlier, that would be on my wish list. So whoever that carrier is, I want to know if we represent them.
Yeah, let me add 2 cents into that as well, Jackie. With the number of transactions that Ivans has done over the years, with the number of carriers that we've done it with, I don't know that there's been even a handful of carriers that we've done renewal quotes for. I understand what it is, and most all our carriers, even if the renewal image is not effective until some 90 days in the future, it's still downloaded as a renewal image. Right. It has a future policy period so that it becomes active when that date's encountered, but we typically don't do renewal quote. We strictly do renewals that have a future policy period.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps or hurts, but
I am going to ask a question about the Ivans ICE system right now. Does the activity notes get sent with a daily download procedure, or does the agent log into the ICE system and pull the files from there? Terry, I'm going to address that to you, but before I do, one of the things that I meant to mention earlier is that I am not sure if everyone on the call knows what ICE stands for. The Ivans ICE system is the Ivans Insurance Carrier Exchange, and part of that system is the ECS mailbox, so the mailbox from which agents will pull their download data from into their system. The activity notes transaction goes through the Ivans mailbox. So that being said, Terry, I'm going to just reiterate the question, does the activity notes get sent with a daily download procedure, or does the agent log into the ICE system and pull the files from there?
It's exactly the way policy download is done. It's posted to the agency's mailbox. It sits there until the agency makes the connection, and then it updates just like policy would. It's the exact same process.
Okay. And there was a question about usage demos, and as I mentioned, we really, in interest of time, unfortunately, we aren't able to provide demos on this particular call, but we would love to provide demos to anyone that is interested in seeing the workflow, how it works, getting some more, maybe even some more specific information about your particular company. We can set those up. Just reach out to us, or we will reach out to you as well and get that done. We'd like to make sure that the vendors have an appropriate amount of time to be able to do that, so we didn't want to have to cut that off during this call.
And Jackie, this is Jim. We can certainly do similar agency type calls as well. If they get a hold of me, we can set up a call and work with that particular carrier and do an agency call as well.
Thank you, Jim. That's actually probably a really good idea for a future call. The next, I've got a comment here, and the comment is, just as claims activity notes should not replace claims download, the policy activity note should not replace AL3 download. I certainly hope the commercial lines download will continue to evolve and include some additional lines of business, such as inland marine or crime. And I think that that's a really important comment. Bonnie, would you have any further comment based on that?
Oh, I couldn't agree more with that. As we said earlier, giving that document download is meant to be a supplement to our policy download. We as agents work primarily in our accord forms in our system on a daily basis. That is our image to our account manager staff as to what is the current coverage in place for that particular client. for us to only get bits and pieces in terms of a policy download for a commercial account does make it very challenging to keep that up to date, because some of it will come through with the download, some we have to update manually. So most certainly, and all of the user groups and ACT and AUGI are working diligently with the carriers to try and enable more policy type transactions for policy downloads. So yes, I agree with that 100%.
Thank you. Terry, I'm going to switch gears back to you for a minute. And please, let's talk about this for a second. We had a comment from both Vertafore and Applied, so I think we need to clear this up. The attachments only work with the XML message, that we cannot attach an XML policy attachment and an AL3 file. So I'm not sure that we said that we would. I think we just need to clear that up.
That's correct, Jackie. You cannot mix the AL3 with any XML ever. Right.
Okay. Thank you. And Irv and Kayleen, thank you for pointing that out too. I want to make sure that the information is accurate and it's clear. Can we have a copy of this PowerPoint presentation? Yes, absolutely. This is kind of a cleanup question. We've got a bunch more coming in, so I'm trying to get to them as quickly as possible. But the link to the recorded webinar as well as the presentation will be made available shortly after this, within a week, and we will forward that to all of the participants, as well as post it on our Ivans community group LinkedIn page. If you're not currently a member of that, I encourage you to join. We try to make that as industry relative as possible and have an open forum for everybody to join and participate. There is another question. We probably have time for about maybe a couple more questions, and then what we will promise is that if we did not get to your question or comment in the next few minutes, we'll make sure that we get to you individually. This question is, if you download a cancellation, why doesn't the agent know about that? Bonnie, I think that the comment was that you may have implied that you wouldn't know about it. You wouldn't know without the activity note. And I think that we should probably make a distinction between it.
They're talking about downloading a policy transaction for cancellation. The actual, we would like know about it. The activity note is a little bit different, and the activity note will actually give a little more information. I don't believe all carriers are in the policy download transaction giving us the information as to why it canceled. If we get the actual cancellation notice that's being sent to our client, we'll be able to see that it was either a non-payment, maybe it was an insured request. We do get a lot of carriers who will download a policy cancellation into our system, and yes, absolutely, we can tell the next day that it canceled, but we have no way of knowing why. So that creates an extra step for the account manager, who then will either have to go out onto RealTime and try and see the status of the policy on the carrier system, or make a phone call to find out what's going on. So the activity note does give us a little bit more information into what's going on.
Great, thank you. We've only got about a minute left, so Terry, I'm going to pose the final question to you, and then again, we will make sure that all of your questions are addressed. The question is, can you download activity notes without downloading policies?
You can do that, absolutely. You don't have to be downloading any line of business in the AL3 standard in order to take advantage of the activity and notes. The AL3 download is not a prerequisite or a requirement for being able to download activity and notes. The one final comment that I would like to say here, though, in talking about activity and notes, Jackie, is that, really think outside the box on how beneficial this free format type of information could be to your agencies. And I was just thinking here, and I'll pose this to Bonnie real quick. Do you think that this could be very beneficial in first notice of loss, Bonnie?
Yes, absolutely. Again, sure they do offer claim download, but the first notice of loss, there can be so much more detail sent with an actual document. And in fact, with some of our carriers, we do get both. And our claim staff does really appreciate being able to see that. One of the other benefits to agencies that I will also reiterate, it's not only the matter of receiving that transaction, but again, the savings to the agency in terms of processing the actual paperwork. Sure, we would get policy download, but then some of our carriers also send a paper deck page or a paper copy of the cancellation notice and reinstatement notice. If rather than getting the paper, we are getting that with our activity notes and getting it in electronic format, that is in and of itself a huge, huge time savings for us as agents.
Great. Well, on that note, I'd like to once again thank our panel for joining us today and thank everyone in the audience for participating in this call. I apologize, there were quite a few questions that we were not able to get to in the time that we had. Again, we'll address them. If you would like demos, we would like to talk to you about that as well. And we're here to help answer questions, and carriers, if you're ready to implement, let us know. We'll help you do that.